good afternoon. Welcome to UK Column Live. It's the 10th of October and it's just on 12 o'clock. We've got Patrick Henningsen joining Brian and myself today with a special report. What's the weather doing, Brian?
Well, I'm pleased to say that yesterday's forecast was roughly accurate. So today, of course, is grey. There has been a hint of rain, and unfortunately, that's our prediction for tomorrow as well. So stay with the UK Column Live weather reports.
Thanks very much, Brian. Are you going to be opening the show today?
Well, it looks like it. Yep. Thanks very much. Okay. Well, we've got quite a mixed bag today. We're going to be talking quite a lot about David Cameron because, of course, as we know, he is the President-elect of Great Britain, and it's only David Cameron that appears in the mainstream press. So we're going to be having a look at a little bit about what's happening around. Obviously, Patrick Henningsen is going to be giving us a report on RIP British Justice. We're going to be having a little look at Jack Straw, what's been happening with British defence industry, still big manoeuvrings in the background, and then we'll move on to some other items overseas, including Greece. So yep. I think we've got a pretty packed programme today. Well, we're going to kick off with the fact that, of course, without any debate in British Parliament, David Cameron, who makes all the decisions to do with everything, is going to go and meet Alex Salmond up in Scotland to actually decide how the referendum is going to be played. And the first slide we've got here is the Express, which is saying that Prime Minister David Cameron and Scottish First Minister Alex Salmond are to meet in Edinburgh on Monday to finalise arrangements for a historic referendum on Scottish independence. And that's also been picked up by The Guardian. But the key point here is that there has been no whole debate in Westminster on what is taking place. And of course, the issue is not simply should Scotland become a region within Europe. Of course, the Scottish people are told it's about independence, but what they will actually become is a region within Europe. But the key issue in the background, of course, is that this decision affects the whole of the stability of the Union of the United Kingdom, and it also affects the future of Britain's independent nuclear deterrent, which, of course, is based on board Trident submarines north of the border. So these two gentlemen at the moment seem to be given free licence to, I've got a close-up here of the two men. These two gentlemen seem to have been given a totally free hand to discuss the future of the United Kingdom without any discussion with the British public, certainly south of the border, but also really it seems north of the border. And of course the other thing that's that is happening north of the border is in the referendum it's now proposed to bring in 16 and 17-year-olds, which of course is arguably sort of weakening the knowledge of the whole event. And
I wonder if the Scottish people, if they go against what Mr Cameron and Mr Salmond want, will they be given a second chance?
Well, I think it's quite likely that they'll be given the traditional European second chance, which of course Ireland has suffered, which is that if you don't get the vote right the first time, we'll simply give you another vote until you do get it right. Yeah. But the key point here has got to be is that these two gentlemen are holding their secret talks. Meanwhile, Westminster is silent, and the British mainstream media is actually silent on what the true implications of Scotland breaking away to become an independent state within the European Union really means. We move on with David Cameron, and the BBC was picking up that he was talking at the Conservative conference, and he's suggesting that the UK faces an hour of reckoning, and I know this was something that interested you, Mike.
No, it was just a follow-up to what we were discussing yesterday. That Cameron is absolutely destroying this country. He's not thinking ahead for future generations. He is just the policies that he is implementing are only going to end with the destruction of of the UK, and I think he's telling us what he intends to do here in this article.
Well, he's already destroyed the future of our children, grandchildren, everything else anyway by getting us into this mess.
Yeah, well, he said here or it says in the BBC report, the Prime Minister will attempt to set out the scale of the challenges faced in bringing about an economic recovery. Well, of course, we know that can't be true because the whole of the international monetary system is on the brink of collapse. But he's also quoted as saying, these are difficult times, we're being tested.
I'd like to know who we is.
Well, we as big society activists, I think, Mike, we know that what is actually going on across all three mainstream parties now is that they're Alinsky activists out in the community, thousands of them in Labour, thousands of them in the Tory party, are now being talked to direct.
Or is he talking about we, as in him and his colleagues, are being tested?
Well, of course, the political elite.
Yes.
That could also be true, of course. Yeah, it's very interesting. But he's reassured us. I'm sorry if we've got a lot of articles on David Cameron, but of course David Cameron is the only person who's making decisions in the country.
Yeah.
So he's now assuring us that the Tories are for everyone. This seems to fly in the face of the cuts by George Osborne, which we were talking about yesterday. So we're seeing massive attack on unemployment, a massive attack on housing benefits, a massive attack on job security. So David Cameron reassuring everybody that it's difficult times. The only people I think are going to be tested are people in the middle and bottom of the pile. Meanwhile, millionaires such as David Cameron and George Osborne and the Miliband brothers are going to be totally protected from what's going to take place. But there's been a bit of cynicism on Twitter, I think.
Well,
is
he
that right?
signed up apparently to Twitter over the weekend, and within 4 days he had 100,000 Twitter followers. But most, according to the Mail, have signed up to abuse him. And the most exciting post as of today has been the picture of the Prime Minister's birthday cake, which is, I mean, it's just a revolting photo.
We should be able to call up here.
Should be able to have that up on screen now. Some of the tweets are as follows. Morning, Dave. What atrocities are you planning to inflict on the working class today, then? Then we've got one from James. Today you say that Britain has no future unless difficult decisions are taken. I don't think you understand concept of time. Then a lady called Jane. How are you getting away with killing off so many sick and disabled people, you beep? When are you going to be up in court for it? And there are many, many more following. So if you wanted to follow David Cameron on Twitter, it's at David Cameron. So yeah, at David_Cameron. So people who are on Twitter, please maybe sign up, maybe suggest he watches the UK Column Live.
I think it just shows unbelievable arrogance that he thinks that because he's David Cameron and he goes on Twitter and he's talking to the ordinary people that they're going to respond to him.
And then responding to, that's one of his posts, his birthday cake, with all them sitting around and their parcels of food being handed out around the country.
Indeed. I wonder, Mike, if you could just put that slide back up. I just wanted to point out that, of course, in the middle we've got William Hague, who's there busy laughing and joking, while at the same time he's doing everything possible to actually stoke up the violence in Syria. And William Hague's admitting publicly at the moment that, yes, there are people transiting through UK who are ultimately going on to fight against the regime in Syria. So we've got these despicable people sitting eating their chocolate cake and acting like the public school boys they are. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the British nation, are responsible for stirring up yet another war in Syria. These people are very dangerous.
And the little man sitting at the end with the glasses is Chief of Staff Ed Llewellyn.
Right.
Anyone wanted to know?
Well, just one before we bring in Patrick, and it's quite appropriate really because this, I'm just going to show you the main Guardian headline on this, but it simply says, Justice Secretary announces mandatory life sentences for rapists and other violent criminals who commit second serious offence. And what we're being told is that, yes, now that Kenneth Clarke has gone, the Tory government is going to get tough on crime. So we've picked out something very emotive like rape and other violent criminals. But of course, as UK Column Live showed yesterday, that on David Cameron's constituency doorstep, so that's Oxford, we have vile physical and sexual assaults which have been carried out at Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, and we have absolutely no reaction from the local Conservatives, including David Cameron's personal agent. We have absolutely no response from the Tory party to the abuse of children on his doorstep in Oxford. So where has British justice gone? Well, I think it's over to you, Patrick, because you're going to tell us that it's rest in peace.
Yes. When I was at the Old Bailey last week, we had a really interesting story. There was a campaign that was going on before the final judgment came in on the sentencing of 5 British Muslims. Up in the front of this campaign was Babar Ahmed and Talha Hassan, who've been incarcerated without trial for 14 years in total. Now, really interesting, and hopefully you'll show the news report afterwards. But the gentleman who is a spokesperson said, look, we're not asking for these gentlemen to be released. All we're asking for is that they are British citizens and that they be tried in a British court and sentenced, if that came to it, into a British court. So the other 2 are persons of interest on that list of men to be extradited to the U.S., and 5 of them will be extradited. The other one is Abu Hamza, who's the sort of terror mascot for the UK. He's our country's Osama bin Laden.
He's there already, though, isn't he?
Yeah, he's there. But the other one, who's the person of interest, number 6, is still awaiting proceedings, still under review, is Harun Rashid Aswat. Now, Aswat is on record, has been outed already, long time ago, as being a British intelligence informant. This would be, in Hollywood terms, what's known as a double agent. But in real life, all an informant is somebody who's on the payroll. Abu Hamza was also on the payroll. That is mainstream media linked in my article in 21st Century Wire. So you have Aswat and Hamza working together as associates out of Finsbury Park Mosque. Their job was to, on paper, was to report back to the British government about possible radicals and whatever, but really their job was to recruit radicals and to create this sort of extreme Islamic cell in the UK, and that has been parroted out, including the French Prime Minister years ago. It's called Londonistan, because it seemed to be a friendly place for jihads and radicals. Now the problem here is with this extradition to the U.S. Now, Babar Ahmed allegedly did a website, and this goes back to the mid-90s, okay, which was in support of Muslims in Russia. We're talking mainly about Chechnya, I believe, and apparently had all these pictures of Russian conscripts who'd been killed and glorifying violence and so forth. Now, I'm going to say right here that I'm not putting it out of the realms of possibility that more than 2 of these gentlemen were informants and were working in this kind of Al-Qaeda kind of intelligence-driven, steered terrorist cell that we know in mythology, in popular mythology, as Al-Qaeda, the terrorist organization, when in reality there initially was created and is still run by the U.S. and the British intelligence agencies, possibly somewhat by the Israelis as well. But what they've done is they bundled all these guys together for extradition, okay? And what they've done is, by using their guys, by putting their guys through this snap legal proceeding that just ignores British sovereignty completely. They've set a legal precedent for basically anybody to be detained for a long period of time without any trial, and then somehow exported or shipped overseas. The reason they're all being extradited, and I'm going to pose this question to you, Brian, and also to all our viewers and to the British public. There's two reasons, I believe, why they were extradited. One is because their particular cases of these people, particularly we're talking about especially Harun Rashid Aswat and Abu Hamza, if they were to be tried in a British court, then the evidence would show that they are intelligence informants, and at least one of them was actively involved in recruiting the 477 bombers from Leeds and into that training drill on the day of 7/7, and to set them up as far as I can tell. But also because for the other detainees, there's no evidence. They wouldn't be convicted in a British court. The case would collapse. So what the legal system here has done and what the government has done is they have a massive problem. They want to close the books on all these Al-Qaeda informants. The U.S. is already starting to close the books on Al-Qaeda when they staged the death of Osama bin Laden in May 2011. But Britain needs to close its books, so they're exporting the problem. They're offshoring the problem. They're shipping it overseas to the U.S., where there will probably be no trial for a number of years, and eventually, possibly, maybe, in a military court. Now, normally with informants, they've been given some sort of a deal under the table. Their families have been paid off. They'll do 10 or 15 years, and then they'll be released later. Or they'll be liquidated, possibly. Yeah. I'm not sure. But none of this makes any legal sense. This is an attack on British sovereignty. This is a dangerous legal precedent, and it covers up the collusion between the intelligence agencies and what happened on 7/7.
Well, okay. Patrick, if I can just come in there, of course, we've also got the added complication that we're now seeing utter corruption, criminal corruption within the British court system. And within Westminster. So we've got, yes, the collusion between the government and the intelligence services, and after your report, I'll come in on Jack Straw, who's popped up in the press. But I'll just say that you were there at the Royal Courts having interviewing the demonstrators on Thursday. On Friday, I was there for the Holly Gregg case, which of course was not reported in mainstream media at all. But I spoke to both the supporters there for the Hamza protest and the protesters talking about the imprisonment of these two guys without trial. And what was incredible is that when you said to them, well, of course, what you're experiencing, the lies, the deceit, the sheer corruption in the British justice system, it's not just happening to Muslims, it's not just happening to other nationalities, it's also happening to ordinary people of whatever colour in Britain. And that started quite an interesting dialogue. So I think the message we'd like to get across from UK Column Live is that we're focusing on these important events that you're taking us through. They are the tip of an iceberg which goes deep into the British establishment. I personally am very sad to say, as somebody who's served my country in the military, that I now believe we have a completely criminal cross-party government. I don't know what your reaction to that would be. Yeah, I agree with you 100%, because the evidence is right there for everybody to see. This extradition trend by extraditing these so-called terrorists, and also for the British government to export and extradite its informants, okay, that are also involved, possibly, and in the case of Aswat, definitely involved in terror operations. That shows a level of corruption, and also to make it a legal precedent in the high courts of justice. That shows a level of corruption that is just systemic.
it goes right to the core. It's rotten from the top to the bottom. And people, the way this is framed in the media is, oh, those Muslims, they deserve it. Let's get rid of them, get them out, kick them out of Britain. But everybody who takes that official line, that official narrative that supports and bolsters the clash of civilizations, they're also undermining their own future on in their own legal footing. Should they be accused, an Anglo-Saxon person could be accused of being a terrorist and be held without trial and then extradited to the United States. I mean, what is this deal that the United States has legal power over the whole of the British state? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's a very frightening situation. Mike, you wanted to come in there.
Well, just to say that, of course, Gary McKinnon, we need to remember Gary McKinnon in this because it's the same deal. This guy committed a crime. Okay, it was a crime in this case. He allegedly attacked US computer systems, but he committed the crime in this country and without any... he is not being tried for that in this country. He's being shipped over to the States. Yeah. And we see the same kind of policy in the European arrest warrant sort of ideal. It's a pretty dangerous situation where the nation that you're allegedly a citizen of is you're just handed over without so much as a barrier leave, really.
Of course, that's also the situation with the European arrest warrant, where we now know that you can be pulled out of this country to face a charge which has been created in another European country. You don't even know what you're accused of, but you can be lifted straight out of the UK on a European arrest warrant. And of course the arrest warrant now also covers political matters, so we're rapidly heading towards the situation where if you disagree with the state, you are actually a terrorist. Welcome to Soviet Britain, basically. Patrick, I believe there's a short film report that you've got for us. Is that correct?
Yeah, and let me just underline this, just to conclude, Brian, that the narrative, the false fairy tale of the war on terror and Islamic extremism bombing in Britain is the axle that is currently turning what looks like a state-sponsored miscarriage of British constitutional justice. That is what's happening right now.
Yeah. Okay, Patrick, thank you very much for that. We'll just have a look at your.
Just remember, this was shot last Thursday. So
right. So the clip you're about to see was shot last Thursday.
We're here this week at the Old Bailey in London, where extradition proceedings are taking place. 2 gentlemen from Great Britain are being extradited to the United States, and of course this is a long list of people lined up to be extradited to the US. These 2 gentlemen have been incarcerated and detained without trial for 8 and 6 years respectively, and the decision will be made on their hearing Friday.
My name is Mohammed Noor. I'm here representing We Are Babar Ahmed organization. We're here today outside the Court of Justice to protest. We're all here to protest against the extradition of Babar Ahmed and Talha Ahsan. Here today we're urging the judges to do the right thing and try them here in the UK.
What are they being charged of?
Well, basically they're not charged here in the UK, as they say that it's insufficient evidence. So what they want to do, the USA has requested the extradition to be tried in the USA. But what we're here is to say that the alleged wrong was committed here. He was allegedly said to have set up a website here in London, but America want to try him for that in America.
So they're being accused of just setting up a website?
Setting up a website in support of Muslims in Russia, and nothing to do with America. They've been detained without trial here, combined 14 years. Talha Ahsan has been around 7 years, Babar Ahmed around, Talha Ahsan around 6 years, Babar Ahmed about 8 years, without charge or trial here in the UK.
Where have they kept them?
Both, I think, in different places. Babar is in Long Lartin prison up in Manchester, and Talha is in another prison. We're out here today basically to show our support, number one, for Baba and Talha, and secondly also to show our disapproval what the judges and the courts are doing here in the UK. We, as Muslims and also non-Muslims and all people who believe in the injustice, know that this is unjust and goes against the fabric of this society. You could say there's a lot of similarities between. There's been extraditions before. Two bankers have gone out there for allegedly doing crimes here as well. There's another 2 cases coming up as well of Richard O'Dwyer, Gary McKinnon, who also supposedly have done some cyber crimes here in the UK and are awaiting their extradition as well. So we're here, we're all against all of this stuff. There's Julian Assange as well being extradited from place to place. America want him. We're here to try and get it all stopped and get the trials done wherever the crime has been committed. That's what we're asking for. We're not asking for these guys to be freed. All we're asking for is a fair trial and where the alleged wrong has been committed.
Do you think it's dangerous to allow the US to extradite so many people? Do you think that hurts British sovereignty?
Very much so. British sovereignty is really being stepped on right here. America has its own justice system. We have our own. We should try our own here in the UK. British justice, as the banner said, British justice for British citizens.
I'm Patrick Henningsen for the UK column.
Okay, well, welcome back. We just stressed there that the key part of Patrick's report is justice. And at the moment we are now in a situation where the corruption in British courts is so extensive that anything is possible. The country can be taken to war, the country can be broken up, and of course we're not seeing any real progress on truth, honesty and justice.
Talking of which,
we need to focus on Mr. Jack Straw, because The Guardian has printed a very interesting little article on him where it's saying he's accused of misleading MPs over the torture of Libyan dissidents. This relates to 2 leading dissidents, Mr. Belhaj and Mr. Al-Sadi. They were basically sent back to Libya, where they were chained, hooded, beaten. Their respective wives were also assaulted and ill-treated, and their children traumatised. They were abducted and jailed in Libya following tip-offs by MI6 and the CIA in 2004. So they were members of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, which opposed Gaddafi. So court documents have been served by the law firm Lee Day and the legal charity and human rights group Reprieve, in which they allege that MI6 alerted Libyan intelligence to the whereabouts of these 2 gentlemen and their families. They were held in Malaysia and Thailand and flown to Libya in a CIA plane. The CIA and MI6 cooperated in the rendition of Sadi and his family from Hong Kong to Libya via Thailand. Straw and his co-defendants knew that torture was endemic. British intelligence officers sent detailed questions to the Libyan authorities to be used during the torture. Straw did not tell the truth when he told the Commons Foreign Affairs Committee in 2005 that Britain was not involved in any rendition operations. And evidence by Sir John Scarlett, the head of MI6, to the Parliamentary Intelligence and Security Committee in 2006 that his agency did not assist in rendition was incorrect and misleading. Evidence by an MI5 witness to the Special Immigration Appeals Commission against the renditions was untrue and misleading. So these are pretty forthright reports about Mr. Jack Straw. But of course there's a lot more to this man than meets the eye, because he's had his finger in the pot over changes to justice, and we'll just bring up on screen here a close-up of Mr. Straw. Now this is to do with a slightly different subject, but it ties in. As April 2009, because of a change in legislation being introduced by Jack Straw, the Justice Secretary, The media will no longer be able to identify those involved in cases such as the Websters. They're referring there to a family court proceeding. It will also be illegal. It will also be illegal for any children currently in care to speak out, even if they feel they are being maltreated. Now, that has got to be one of the most extraordinary laws ever been brought in, that here we have the state allowing a system to actually cover up and close down if children are being abused. Now, why would you want to introduce that? My opinion is because you know perfectly well children are being abused and you want to keep the lid on it, just as you would want to keep the lid on the fact that Britain is actually involved in torture. We can take this a little bit further because the UK early in 2011 reported that there had been a consistent pattern through both the Labour and Conservative governments to actually close down the work of our security services in tracking subversives and dissidents in the country. And it should come as no surprise that we were able to point out that it was Mr. Jack Straw himself who actually led the destruction of, I just have to pick it out on the screen here, 250,000 MI5 files on potentially subversive people. Those were destroyed, and of course one of the people who would have figured in those MI5 files was Mr. Straw himself for his political activities as a youth. So in following up on Patrick's report and taking a look at just one person who has been an absolutely major player in the corruption of British justice, Jack Straw has got to figure pretty highly. This is a very dangerous situation which is growing in UK at the moment, because if Ken Clarke gets his wish and we see the secret courts brought in, the Star Chambers, then effectively we are very, very close to being in the equivalent of the Soviet Union or East Germany. Yeah. Welcome to Tory politics 2012. Okay, we're getting to where you want to get to, which is Greece. I'm just going to very quickly flag up. Oh, sorry, I nearly forgot about this. Is just following on from Mr. Straw. This is an interesting little storm brewing because EastEnders dared to actually show as one of their plots a child being taken by social services, and the Express here is reporting that the head of the British Association of Social Workers has accused the BBC of being too lazy and arrogant to get it right over the story. The plot line, which saw teenage mum Lola Pierce's baby Lexi taken from her, prompted a furious reaction on Twitter, both from those critical of social workers and care professionals, both those critical of social workers and care professionals defending the so-called social worker features. I think our comment on this would be, of course, that the BBC has actually been far too lazy and arrogant to actually deal with any of the massive amount of data about the thousands of children that are being taken, and of course put through Mr. Straw's secret family courts where there is no jury and no press to actually record what's taking place.
I mean, they can make a storyline up on it in EastEnders, but they won't report on it.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, now I'll just run... Where did this lady pop up from? I'm being caught out here.
I don't know. You did the slides. This lady is fascinating. It's in the Mail today. She's plastered all over the place, lots of pictures. And all we know is that she's been arrested in her home. 55-year-old Constance Briscoe has been questioned by the Kent police, bailed pending further inquiries. She's a judge. She's being suspended from her role at the moment. But there is no details of what she was arrested for.
Right. Nothing.
And I just find it interesting. Why would they plaster this woman all over the place without any kind of a story? I mean, there's sort of 4 pages worth of story here on this lady. I mean, to me,
she's got to be a remarkable woman to actually become a judge in what must be one of the the most secret societies, male-dominated secret societies there is, of how judges are selected, because even barristers are talking to the UK column at the moment and saying that even barristers have little or no idea as to how judges are selected.
So the reason I wanted to bring it up is because there is absolutely no story here. It doesn't tell us anything, but they're plastering her all over the place. She's 55, she lives in Clapham, and that's all we know. But she's all over the place. So unless I don't know.
Well,
we'll watch this space really.
We'll wait to see.
But if anything comes out about it, I just thought it was interesting. It was pages of it dedicated to it in the Mail.
Okay, well, watch what's happening with the Justice. Now, hopefully, if I press this button,
BAE,
we do get there. This is the BBC reporting a little bit on the BAE and EADS merger. This was the plan to take BAE into a German and French consortium, which would have meant that our major defence contractor was falling under the control of the French and German governments. Story also picked up by the Mail. Cabinet demands last-ditch talks on BAE. France and Germany refused to back down over their stake. But what's very interesting is this potential deal, as far as the public's concerned and the way it was reported in the mainstream media, had more or less come out of nowhere, and then we pointed out, and other alternative press sources pointed out, that if this deal went ahead, it simply meant that Britain had no independent defence contracting system. What we'd like to do is just flag up that this was back in March. The UK column was warning that Cameron's Franco-British Defence Pact was going to undermine UK's independent strategic nuclear defence capability. So we were actually talking about the fact that we now had the French moving into our nuclear industry, and we even had French ballistic nuclear submarines quietly visiting Faslane nuclear submarine base, little of which was being reported. But of course, behind this even, I'm just bringing up a quote on screen here. This is from the Franco-British Council. And the UK column exposed that going back in 2010, secret meetings were taking place, led by the Franco-British Council, which is a charity, by the way, but it was hosting meetings in the ambassador's residence in Paris, at which senior politicians and senior British military officers were meeting to discuss Britain's future strategic defence and contracting arrangements. And I'd just like to pull out of the quote from the Franco-British Council Defence Seminar, where it's saying that indeed, as companies are increasingly forced to compete on a global playing field, European cooperation has become even more important. And that's a quote from Peter Robbie, Vice President Business Development and UK Corporate Strategy Coordination, EADS, because no one country alone can afford to invest the cutting-edge research necessary to take on the world. So what the UK column is flagging up here is that back in 2009, 2010, the Franco-British Council, which is a charity, this is the extraordinary thing, was holding meetings with no minutes behind closed doors in which this very type of merger between BAE and EADS was being debated. So our question at the time was, how can a charity be involved in secret discussions over Britain's strategic defence? And how is it that when the UK column has asked for release of information under the Freedom of Information Act, no information has come forward, and the politicians who were involved in those closed-door meetings also are refusing to give us information. So our belief is that organisations other than Westminster are now very nearly in control of our defence industry.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that brings us on to an amazing picture here.
Angela Merkel is decided to go to visit Greece to support the Prime Minister, Mr. Samaras. But she was met by pensioners, students, tens of thousands of Greek demonstrators took to the street, bearing in mind that it's actually now against the law over in Greece to demonstrate. They were flouting the government's ban on protests. They all came to the streets to protest her, that she's turned up in Greece. Authorities had deployed 7,000 police, water cannons and helicopters. Snipers were placed on the rooftops to ensure the German leader's safety. But when I think it's the Independent, went to speak to some of the protesters, they said they want her to take her cuts and basically leave the country. She said, another lady has said, her policies are leaving our kids and grandchildren unemployed without any prospect for the future. So all against austerity, and I don't understand why she went over there, really. Okay, she went over there to support, but surely she's going to know it's going to just create tension, and this is going to happen, isn't it?
I think it was an Angela Merkel parade. It was a victory parade. She was on parade on one of her conquests, which is Greece. It's very serious. With an eye on the clock, I think, Mike.
Just going to say, whatever's going on in Greece and Spain at the moment with these kind of public demonstrations and riots and so on, this is on the cards for Britain within the next 2 or 3 years as these kind of similar kind of austerity starts to bite over here, and we actually get to the meat of the plans that Cameron has for welfare and other things.
Well, absolutely. I'm going to give you the last shot of the show because I know that you've got some comments about food prices and things. But we'll just bring up on screen. This is one that Louise found.
Yeah, well, it's really sad. A war hero dies penniless after paying for his care. He's an RAF veteran, had dementia, forced to sell his home. All his inheritance that he was saving for his grandchildren got taken. He used all of that up to try and pay for his dementia care, and we're not looking after our elderly at all. We're not looking after everybody, really.
Well, I'm sure we are, but we're actually focusing on the
Mr.
Conservatives.
Cameron,
We're focusing on Mr. Cameron and Mr. Osborne, the Miliband brothers, Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, Clegg. They are all involved. They're anti-British.
Totally.
And this gentleman that served his country is treated like dirt. This is not accidental. These people know what they're doing, and we see this very serious situation growing in Europe. Violence on the streets. It's being engineered, and
I think that whole visit with Merkel, though, was really just to create this kind of a tension. Because they banned protesting, and it's obviously she's taken everyone's livelihoods away. The Germans have. So
we wait and see.
Yeah.
Okay, last subject, wet weather, which is always popular. Mike, what have you got to tell us about this one?
Well, the BBC's reporting that Britain's harvest this year 15% down on previous years. We've reported this on a number of occasions over the last 2 or 3 months that this was coming. I think Malcolm and I mentioned, or Malcolm mentioned it on one of the original news programs we did, so that's going back 3-4 months. Crops down this year, food prices going up this year, speculation pushing food prices up further. But in the meantime, as we mentioned in this issue of the UK column newspaper, the government is running various scams to get farmers to divert land away from farming. So this is just another example of the steady decline, steady destruction of our infrastructure, including our farming infrastructure, unable to cope with weather conditions, and we're all going to suffer as a result through rising food prices.
And we're going to say to people very gently, really do think about this and take sensible precautions, which is, have you got enough food in your house? But for us at UK Column Live, if we are reading the picture in UK at the moment, we have a government in Westminster which is not a single party, it's agenda politics. The three parties are working together, and their basic policy is anti-British. We're now seeing them attempting to divide and rule this country. We want to stop it. We've got to speak out. We've got to withdraw our consent, and we've got to tell a friend.
We do.
Okay.
Definitely. Just a quick word about tomorrow's show on TNS, the 2-hour special. We have Bill Maloney joining us here in the studio. Well, we've been speaking to Brian. Going to be covering quite a bit with regard to Jimmy Savile, hence why we haven't mentioned it today. But thanks for joining us. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe, ukcolumn.org. And we'll be back tomorrow, 2 p.m. on the UK Column website and on TNS Radio. Thank you.
Thank you.